This video is a compilation of 3 different videos I made, one talking about the real-life inspiration of Hajime no Ippo characters, one talking about the real-life inspiration of Hajime no Ippo techniques, and finally the real-life version of the Kagawa gym. If you've seen any of those videos, you might want to skip this one, but if you haven't seen any, enjoy the 15 minutes of Hajime no Ippo in real life. Did you know that the Kagawa gym from Hajime no Ippo actually exists in real life? This is a gym that is actually owned by the author of Hajime no Ippo, Joji Morikawa. Hajime no Ippo is an anime that is pretty well renowned for being realistic, so it makes perfect sense that the writer of the show actually owns a boxing gym, but it becomes a lot more complicated than that when you realize that this gym was created after the conception of Hajime no Ippo. To give you all a little backstory, before Hajime no Ippo was created, the writer Morikawa was actually a very unsuccessful manga artist. I know that's hard to believe, but attempt after attempt, nothing but flops were created by Morikawa, yet the editing staff kept giving him more chances to prove himself. Morikawa, with a wife and a kid at home at this point, had decided that his next attempt was going to be his final one. Nuchi, the person who was in charge of editing at the time, had told Morikawa to try making a boxing anime because he knew that was something Morikawa was very passionate about. Morikawa originally refused the idea, but he decided because this was going to be his last attempt, he might as well make it about something that he liked, so he decided to make Hajime no Ippo, the boxing manga. So with inspiration from Ashita no Joe as well as his co-worker, Hajime no Ippo was officially formed. This was 1989. JB Sports Gym was actually made in 1994, 5 years after the release of Hajime no Ippo. The reason I gave that overly long backstory is to drill in the point that Morikawa's passion for boxing started long before JB Sports was made. However, due to the fact that Morikawa became even more involved in boxing than he was before, he decided to open up JB Sports and even become a cornerman at the gym. The gym is designed after the one in Hajime no Ippo, even having a Takamura statue on the roof as well as a merchandise shop in the gym. Also very similar to the Kagawa gym, this gym is extremely compact with only 12 boxers. Everything I've said so far kind of makes it sound like this gym is just a ploy to sell merchandise, but that is actually not the case, as quite a few boxers in this gym have seen success. Obviously, the success of the boxers is somewhat accredited to the coaches, and at one point, one of the coaches was actually the real-life model for Miyata. That's right, if you trained at JB Sports Gym in the past, you were going to be trained by a real-life version of Miyata from Hajime no Ippo. He was the first ever coach at the gym and led Fukushima Manabu to a super bantamweight JBC championship title. Furthermore, you cannot make this up, the person who was coached by real-life Miyata was led to an OPBF championship title. And then after a long drought on November 30th, 2019, Tamura Ryochi won the Super Bantamweight OPBF silver title. Can you credit Morikawa for the success of these boxers? Well, I actually think his role was more close to Yagi in the sense that he is not a boxing coach himself, but he is a second. However, I do think you can accredit Morikawa's experience as a second to the reason that Kagawa has developed so much as a character throughout the years and become such a well-written, fleshed-out coach. JB Sports Gym has also changed Hajime no Ippo in other ways, such as Itagaki Manabu being based off of Fukushima Manabu, a boxer at the gym we mentioned earlier. Hajime no Ippo just teeters on that edge of fantasy and realistic sports. This is because while we do get to see a lot of interesting fighting techniques throughout the show, a lot of them are modeled after real-life fighting styles and real-life boxers. Let's go over the Hajime no Ippo characters that are modeled after real-life boxers. First, we have Ippo. Ippo is clearly inspired by Mike Tyson. Just to draw a few similarities, Mike Tyson was bullied before he started boxing. Despite being shorter than most he went against, he specialized in power. And thanks to their similar physiques and similarity in power, most of their fighting techniques are the same, including Ippo's signature stance, the peekaboo stance. Mike Tyson was also a fighter that had popularized the gazelle punch, a popular move that Ippo uses as well. Furthermore, in the manga, we actually see Ippo get Mike Tyson's tapes, and that is what inspires him to start boxing. In the anime, it is mysterious boxers on the tape. In the manga, it is directly Mike Tyson. And we see Ippo with a Mike Tyson poster in his room. It is also directly confirmed that Ippo is inspired by Mike Tyson in the 4th bunko of Hajime no Ippo, Kamigawa's Diary, which I could not find for the life of me. I'm going to assume this is a Japanese-only manga. But it is also confirmed here that Ippo is inspired by another boxer, Ray Mancini, and of course we can accredit Jack Dempsey to his signature move, the Dempsey roll. Next up, also confirmed in the Hajime no Ippo Bunko, Takamura is modeled after Roberto Duran. Similar to when Coach Kagawa found Takamura, Roberto started street fighting at a very young age. According to a Ring TV article, quote-unquote, Roberto began fighting at the age of 14 on the streets of Panama City. In that neighborhood, you've got to do or die. Duran wanted to stay in one piece. He felt he was too young to die, so he learned to fight and fight hard. One of the most famous scenes in Hajime no Ippo is Takamura getting in a fight as well as winning against a bear. This is also inspired by Roberto Duran, who apparently knocked out a horse when bet a bottle of whiskey that he couldn't do it. Furthermore, it is definitely fair to say that Takamura as well as Roberto share some very similar mannerisms, as you can see in this clip right here.
But you predicted that you would win in 9 rounds and it took you 13. What happened?
Buchanan did most of the running. He didn't present no fight.
I believe there's talk now of a rematch later on. How do you think you're going to make out there?
Return match, I'll make him sleep faster.
Aoki's signature move, the frog punch, is actually a real move made by Koichi Wajima. I could only find one instance of this move used in an actual fight. Here it is. It is not confirmed that Aoki is directly modeled after Wajima. However, after Amei said that he planned on crushing the frog punch, Aoki did say that the person that he most admired is Wajima. So it's pretty much confirmed where Aoki got his signature move, the frog punch. As for the rest of his fighting style, I think we can safely call it the style of drunken fist. The person who popularized this style is Emmanuel Augustus, and while it is not directly confirmed that Aoki is inspired by Emmanuel, I think that it is pretty safe to speculate. Not only do both Emmanuel and Aoki utilize a very unconventional style, but both of them face similar tribulations. For example, Aoki is constantly chastised as a boxer for his unconventional fighting style, being called a bad fighter. All are familiar criticisms that Emmanuel Augustus had in his boxing career. Next up, Miyata. The writer of Hajime no Ippo has officially said that Miyata is based off of his personal friend, Naoto Takahashi, a former Japan as well as OPBF champion, similar to Miyata. Naoto was nicknamed the Prince of the Reversal, thanks to his ability to come back while in a deficit in a fight. It's stated that Miyata's use of counters are directly modeled after Naoto. Miyata's boxing is also modeled off of Sugar Ray Leonard, who is stated to be Miyata's favorite boxer. Takashi Sendo is modeled after Japanese boxer Hidekazu Akai, who is nicknamed the Nanawa no Rocky. That may sound familiar, as Sendo's nickname is the Rocky of Nanawa. Sendo's signature move, named the Smash, is a real move named by Donovan Ruddock. The way Ruddock would use this move in real life is he would drop his hand low and then combine an uppercut as well as a hook. If you've made it this far in the video, guess how many subscribers I have, and if you think I deserve more than that number, then drop a subscription for me. I have 482 subscribers. What'd you guess? Mashiba is a more directly inspired character, being very closely related to Thomas Hearns. Thomas Hearns is the first boxer in history to win 5 world titles in 5 different weight divisions. He did this using various techniques that we have seen Mashiba employ. Thomas Hearns is accredited for popularizing the flicker jab. He is also the one who popularized the Hitman stance, being named after Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Despite being a welterweight, Thomas Hearns was also 6'1" with a 78-inch reach. These are all characteristics that relate Mashiba and Thomas Hearns. Vorg is based off of Russian boxer Yuri Arbashakov. I don't know how to say it, but that sounds right, doesn't it? Yuri was an amateur boxing star in the Soviet Union until he emigrated to Japan as a part of a program. He then fought nearly all of his fights in Japan and became the WBC flyweight champion, where he would defend his belt 9 times. Ricardo Martinez is modeled after Ricardo Lopez. In an interview with Joji Morikawa by Yu Kimura, Morikawa, the writer of Hajime no Ippo, said that he picked Lopez at the time because he was the strongest world champion that he saw firsthand. He didn't believe that there was such a strong person. Ricardo Lopez is completely undefeated, similar to Ricardo Martinez, with a record of 51-0 with 1 draw. He is also a Mexican boxer who defended the lineal and WBC strawweight championship a record 21 times. Brian Hawk's wild, unpredictable style is based off of popular boxer Prince Nassim. Prince Nassim is known for almost dancing around his opponent and hitting them from very unconventional positions. He was also extremely dominant with 36 wins and 1 loss. Date is based off of Ozaki Fujio, a former professional boxer in Japan. I could not find much information on this guy, but it is officially quoted that Morikawa based Date off of him. You guys showed a lot of support on my last video where I talked about the real life counterparts of Hajime no Ippo characters. That being said, I am back with a part 2, but today we're going to be talking about the real life counterparts of the techniques used in Hajime no Ippo. Starting off with the Dempsey roll, as it is the most iconic move in the show. In the anime, Ippo came up with this move on his own, only later finding out that it was a technique made by Jack Dempsey. However, in the manga, Ippo was inspired directly by Mike Tyson, who doesn't actually use the Dempsey roll at all. Mike Tyson is the person who popularized the Customito shift, named after Mike Tyson's trainer. While not exactly the same as the Dempsey roll, I'm sure you see the similarity in this clip. Of course, the move that Ippo uses is the actual Dempsey roll, the technique of real-life boxer Jack Dempsey. But it's pretty interesting how the writer of Hajime no Ippo chose to make Ippo's Dempsey roll a product of the Customito shift, once again hammering down on the similarities between Ippo and Mike Tyson. Mashiba is easily one of the most realistic fighters in Hajime no Ippo. Most, if not all of his techniques are derived from real-life boxers. First up, his flicker jab. This is a technique popularized by fighter Thomas Hearns, where you relax your lead arm and as fast as possible, reach out to your opponent's face and snap your wrist without focusing on stepping into or putting power into the punch. The flicker jab is often portrayed in Hajime no Ippo as a zoning tool Mashiba uses to reach his opponents from supernaturally far away. That's exactly how Thomas Hearns used it as well, as just like Mashiba, his height and reach were also absolutely ridiculous. As a matter of fact, Hearns has never been at a reach disadvantage in his career. This is what makes the flicker jab so effective despite not putting power into it. It's not made to get knockouts, it's made to keep your opponent away from you using your size, just like in the show. Mashiba also uses the Hitman style, where everything down to the detail of swinging his hand, albeit while very exaggerated, is also the stance of Thomas Hearns. The reason Thomas Hearns would use this stance is to optimize the use of his height as well as his flicker jab. The purpose of moving the hand back and forth was to, just like in Hajime no Ippo, briefly confuse his opponent and mix them up. Vorg's signature move, the White Fang, was very likely modeled after Sugar Ray Leonard's finish against Daniel Aldo Gonzalez on March 24th, 1979. Sugar Ray Leonard is seen finishing his opponent with an uppercut into an overhand, exactly what Vorg's White Fang entails. This could almost be seen as a coincidence, but seeing how Miyata is directly modeled after Sugar Ray Leonard, the finish looks almost exactly like the White Fang Vorg does, and we have seen him mentioned many times throughout the series, makes it extremely likely the writer of Hajime no Ippo is a fan of Sugar Ray Leonard and the White Fang was inspired by this KO. Since you've made it this far in the video, guess how many subscribers I have based off what you've seen so far, and if the number is lower than what I actually have, consider dropping a subscription to help me hit that number. We are currently at 1,640. Next up is one of the more unrealistic techniques in Hajime no Ippo. I'm talking about Date's rubbernecking. When I first saw this, I thought, no way this is a real technique, but it actually is. It's not known who invented this technique or who made it popular, but someone who is very known for doing it is Roberto Duran, a name you might recognize as the inspiration for Takamura. Just as Date uses it in Hajime no Ippo, rubbernecking is a technique where you turn your head to reduce the impact of the punch. Interestingly enough, I did find a clip of Roberto Duran doing this in a fight, and it looks exactly like Date doing it in Hajime no Ippo. Sendo's signature move, named the Smash, is actually a real move invented by Donovan Razor Ruddock. The Smash, in simple terms, is a hybrid between a hook and an uppercut, but the way that Donovan would use this move is he would drop down as well as drop his lead hand down so that he could generate more power on his way up. Donovan struggled to get knockouts when people would just turtle up, similar to what Ippo does. The Smash was invented to not only break through people's guards, but also to get your hand into a position where the opponent cannot see it. Next up is the corkscrew punch used by Date, which is a real move invented by Charles Kid McCoy. In Hajime no Ippo, this punch is portrayed as something that becomes more powerful thanks to the twisting motion, and while that isn't exactly the case in real life, it can become faster or more powerful depending on the physique you have because it does engage different muscles. But the way this punch is used in real life is more so a normal cross or a normal hook and then a twisting motion at the end, which can be quite powerful for cutting up an eye area or further opening wounds. Furthermore, if you slip a punch, it is a good way to punish your opponent because it's not going to be as visible as an overhand. People have been debating the pros and cons about this technique for a long time, which has led to it not being exactly that popular today. However, it is used in other martial arts and a bunch of people will claim that it is a great technique. Next up is the Gazelle Punch, a move that is spammed by Ippo. This is a move that was invented by Floyd Patterson but made popular by himself, Rocky Marciano, as well as Mike Tyson. Ippo's version is most likely taken from Mike Tyson as he is very inspired by him. This is a technique that is better used by shorter boxers such as Ippo, as you need to get in the correct position to snap your legs into the punch. This is a very dangerous punch because of that. You are kind of throwing yourself into a position to generate more power, but it will be absolutely devastating if you are countered. Next up is Miyata's cross counter. This is actually inspired from another anime who was inspired by a real show. Miyata's cross counter is inspired by fellow boxing anime Ashita no Joe, who has inspired Hajime no Ippo many times throughout its lifespan, being referenced countless times throughout the manga. The cross counter is a very old technique, and as the name implies, it is called the cross counter because your arms cross with your opponents as you go to counter them. I could not find who popularized or made this technique because presumably it was used all the way back in the 1800s, so it would be impossible to find that out. Miyata also has a technique called the red lightning technique, which is a combination of a corkscrew punch as well as a cross counter. Thanks to the corkscrew punch's ability to generate power from a short distance, this is a very viable move in real life. However, I have not seen it used yet, probably because the corkscrew punch is not that popular. But as mentioned earlier, this is a combination between two real moves, so I figured it was worth mentioning. Next up is the motionless jab of Ricardo Martinez. This is an extremely fast jab that is not at all telegraphed. Now, this is not a technique where you flick your wrist at the end of your jab or something specific. This is an homage to the perfect boxing of Ricardo Martinez's inspiration, Ricardo Lopez, who has repeated the jab so many times to the point of perfection. But I will say, in a video by Michael J. White, he explained that a lot of people are taught to jab at an angle, and if you jab completely straight, you are more likely to be accurate. So just imagine the best boxer when it comes to jabs, absolutely perfect form, and then make them repeat that jab a million times, and you probably end up with a pretty similar technique to Ricardo Lopez's perfect jab. Ricardo Lopez is most likely the boxer that Morikawa respects the most. As he said in an interview, "I could not believe that a boxer could be that good." And that is the inspiration behind Ricardo Martinez, and that is definitely the motivation behind the motionless jab. Next up, we have the rabbit punch. This is a blow delivered to the back of the head or to the base of the skull, notorious for its potential to cause severe and irreversible injuries, including spinal cord injury or instant death. This punch is so dangerous that it is considered to be the worst thing you could do in the boxing ring, and even recently in 2015, Pritchard Colin, a well-known boxer, was struck in the back of the head, which put him into a coma and a vegetative state. We see this punch in Hajime no Ippo when Nakota, who is already punch drunk from sparring with Kagawa, got into a fight with Ralph Anderson, who used the rabbit punch on him, forcing him to eventually retire altogether from boxing thanks to the injury. If you want to know where the frog punch is from, click the video on your screen right now. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed and want to see more content like this, and I will see you guys later.